My husband looked me in the eyes and said, "You wanted to be a mother, so start acting like one." Then he walked out, leaving me alone with our 6-month-old twins while he enjoyed a 4-day vacation with his friends. When he finally returned, he stepped through the front door and immediately froze. At 4:15 on a Sunday afternoon in August, my husband walked through our front door, tanned, rested, and smiling, carrying a cooler that smelled like lake water and a story he had clearly rehearsed on the drive home. Then he saw the kitchen table. His mother sat at one end of it, holding our daughter Ivy against her shoulder. My sister sat beside her with Ivy's twin Lila, asleep on her chest. In front of the empty chair, his chair, lay a printed screenshot, a yellow legal pad filled with 4 days of my handwriting, and a bank statement with 6 transactions highlighted in yellow. Beside the stairs sat a packed overnight bag. His. Brandon froze in the doorway the way people freeze when the story they rehearsed meets an audience they didn't plan for. The smile stayed stranded on his face for one more second, like it hadn't gotten the news yet. Nobody spoke. We had agreed on that in advance. We were going to let him read the room he built, to understand how my kitchen turned into a deposition, how I went from a woman who apologized for her own exhaustion to a woman with an exhibit list. You have to go back 4 days, to a Thursday evening, and the small, ordinary sound of a door closing. Let me back up. My name is Amy. I'm 34, and for 9 years before my daughters were born, I worked as a senior claims adjuster for a regional insurance company. I spent my career reading other people's disasters, water damage, suspicious garage fires, burglaries where the stolen watch turned up in a safe deposit box. My whole job, distilled to one sentence, was this: find the moment where the story stops matching the receipts. I was good at it. I could sit across from a man lying about a flooded basement and feel the exact second his timeline bent. I want you to remember that about me. It matters later. Brandon and I met 6 years ago at a friend's wedding, where he gave a toast so funny the bride's grandmother asked if he did this professionally. He's a territory sales manager for a building supply company, 36 years old, the kind of man who remembers your dog's name and your golf handicap. Everyone's favorite. That's not sarcasm. For most of our marriage, he was my favorite too. We tried for 1 baby and got 2. When the ultrasound tech said, "Okay, so there are 2 heartbeats," Brandon laughed so hard he had to sit down. And I remember thinking, this man is going to be so fun as a father. Fun. I want you to remember that word too. Lila and Ivy were born in February. My short-term disability paid 60% of my salary for 8 weeks. After that, my leave was unpaid. We had planned for it. We had an emergency fund, $6,400, built $4 at a time over 4 years, every tax refund and skipped vacation. Brandon called it the moat, as in, whatever happens, we've got the moat. The slide into what my life became was so gradual I can't point to the day it happened. It started with vocabulary. Brandon didn't parent. He helped. He didn't take a night shift. He gave me a break. Once, at a barbecue in May, someone asked if he could grab more ice and he said, "Can't, I'm babysitting," while holding his own daughter. Everybody laughed. I laughed. I had gotten very good at laughing. Here's the thing about being the default parent of twins. There is no one dramatic moment to point at. There's just math. 2 babies, 2 bodies, 1 of me. Every feed times 2, every diaper times 2, teething times 2 on offset schedules, because the universe has a sense of humor. At the girls' 6-month checkup, their pediatrician, Dr. Priya Rahman, 14 years in practice, the kind of doctor who hands out her nurse line number like a promise, pressed a gloved finger to Lila's lower gum and said, "Buckle up. You've got teeth incoming and twins like to take turns." She looked at me a beat longer than she looked at the babies. "Who's helping you at home?" "My husband," I said. I said it fast. That's the detail I keep coming back to. I said it fast. The way you answer a question you've prepared for. 1 week before the trip, I can date it exactly because I still have the text thread. I asked Brandon about hiring a mother's helper, a neighborhood college student, 18 an hour, 2 afternoons a week, just so I could sleep or shower or sit in a parked car in silence. He didn't even look up from his phone. "We can't afford that right now, Ames. The moat's for emergencies." I said, "Okay." I always said okay. 7 days later, I found out what he thought the moat was actually for. That Thursday started at 4:50 a.m. when Ivy woke up screaming with her fist jammed in her mouth, which woke Lila, which is how twin households work. Pain is a group activity. By 6:40 that evening, I was standing in the kitchen with Lila crying into my shoulder and Ivy wailing in her bouncer, doing the sway bounce shush routine that had worn a groove in the floor and in me. 9 dirty bottles covered the counter. I had eaten a piece of toast at 7 that morning and nothing since. Brandon walked in from work and frowned. Not at the babies, at the noise. I could hear them from the driveway. "Can't you do something? They're teething," I said. "Can you wash the bottles while I calm them down?" "I just got home. I've been doing this since 5 this morning." He looked around the kitchen the way an inspector looks at a failed property, like the mess had personally insulted him. "You're home all day, Amy." "I work. I'm also working," I wanted to say. "I'm keeping 2 tiny humans alive on 90-minute sleep cycles." But Lila hiccuped against my neck, and I did what I'd been doing for 6 months. I swallowed it. Then I saw the bag, the green duffel he used for fishing trips, sitting by the front door, packed, zipped. The rod case leaned against the wall beside it like it had been standing there confidently for hours. Something in my chest went very quiet and very cold at the same time. "Why is your bag packed?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. He straightened a stack of mail that didn't need straightening. "Simon and Theo are picking me up. We're going fishing. Tonight?" night? For 4 days. I did the thing I would spend the next 4 days undoing. I tried to make it reasonable. Maybe he'd mentioned it in April and I'd lost it in the fog. Maybe this was my failure of memory instead of his failure of everything else. But there had been no conversation. He had researched a cabin, coordinated 2 friends' schedules, packed a duffel, and loaded a rod case, an entire operational plan, without one word to the woman he was leaving to hold all of it. Did you arrange any help for me? I asked. You've handled the girls before. Not alone. Not for 4 days. They're babies, Amy. He said it like a product spec. Feed them, change them, put them to sleep. A horn sounded outside Theo's truck. Brandon picked up the duffel, and I heard myself ask the question I already knew the answer to. The question that was really a flare sent up over the whole marriage. If I called tomorrow and said I couldn't manage, would you come home? He hesitated. It wasn't long, maybe 2 seconds. But I'd spent 9 years watching people hesitate before they answered questions about money and fault, and I knew exactly what that pause was. It was a man calculating whether the truth was affordable. Then he looked me in the eyes, the first time all evening, and said, "You wanted to be a mother, Amy, so start acting like one." The door made a small sound when it closed. What it closed on wasn't small at all. At 3:04 in the morning, I sat on the nursery floor with one baby on each side of me and half a granola bar for dinner. I remember the details with claims adjuster precision, because that's what my brain does when it can't afford to feel things yet. The white noise machine hissing its fake ocean, the green light on the monitor, Lila asleep against my left thigh, Ivy on my right, finally down after 90 minutes of gum-aching misery, one fist still curled tight against her cheek. I checked my phone at 3:04, and again at 3:07, and again at 3:15. He never called, never texted, never asked whether his daughter's fevers had come, whether the teething drops helped, whether I was upright, not once. 4 days is 96 hours, and I can tell you the exact number of those hours in which the father of my children wondered about them out loud. 0. I told myself he was out of cell range. Lakes do that, I told myself. The rationalization lasted until 9:20 the next morning, when my phone lit up with a notification. Brandon had posted a photo. Excellent signal, apparently. He was on a dock, tilted back in a folding chair, sunglasses on, a cold drink sweating in his hand, the lake behind him doing its best postcard impression. The caption read, "Finally getting the peace and quiet I deserve." 47 likes by noon. I stood in my kitchen holding a bottle in one hand and my phone in the other, and I felt something I can only describe as a professional instinct waking up from maternity leave. My hands weren't shaking. That's the part that scared me. They were perfectly steady as I took the screenshot. I didn't know yet what I was going to do with it. I just knew what 9 years of fraud files had taught me. You preserve the record before you understand it. The understanding comes later. The record has to come first. Then I did something I hadn't done since February. I got out a fresh yellow legal pad, and at the top of the first page I wrote the date, and under it, 450A, I, wake, teething, 515A, L, wake, 6002A, bottles, X2, 40s EA, feed times, diaper counts, sleep windows, medication doses, in milliliters with timestamps. It looked like a care log. It was a care log. It was also, though I didn't have the language for it yet, Exhibit B. My sister Summer saw the post at lunch. She's 29, a dental hygienist with Fridays off, and she has never once in her life pretended a thing was fine when it wasn't, which is probably why I'd been avoiding her calls for 2 months. She called. "Where is he?" I told her. There was a silence on the line that I can only describe as load-bearing. Then, "I'm coming over." 30 minutes later, she was at my door with 2 grocery bags and the expression of a first responder. She didn't ask what she could do. She washed 9 bottles. She held Ivy so I could take my first shower in 2 days, and I stood under that water so long it went cold, because apparently my body had been keeping a tab. She put a rotisserie chicken and roasted potatoes in front of me, and physically sat there until I ate it, like I was one of her patients who couldn't be trusted to floss. Then, while I ate, she asked the question, casually, the way you'd disarm something. "How much does Brandon actually do?" Like, actually. And here's where I have to tell you the ugly part, the part that isn't about him. I opened my mouth to give her the barbecue version. He's been buried at work. He does bath time when he can. He's so good with them when he's on. I had a whole polished inventory of these lines. I'd been deploying them for 6 months. To my mother, to his mother, to the pediatrician, to the neighbor, to myself. And for the first time, I couldn't do it. I was too tired to lift the story. 2 nights, I said. In 6 months, he has handled 2 nights. Summer put down her fork. 2, she said. 2. I watched her recalibrate my whole marriage in real time, and I understood, with nauseated professional clarity, what I had been doing since February. I had been adjusting his claim, smoothing the file, making the numbers match a story that was never true, and calling it loyalty. I know how to spot that from across a desk. It took me 6 months to spot it in my own kitchen. That night, after Summer left, I drafted a long text to Brandon. 3 paragraphs. Calm, fair, generous. Here's how hard it's been. Here's what I need. Here's how we fix this. My thumb hovered over send for a full minute. Then I read it again and understood what it actually was. It was one more edit to the file. One more draft of me making it easy. I deleted it. I put the phone face down. Whatever happened next was going to happen on the record he actually earned. Friday night, Ivy's cheeks went from teething pink to genuinely flushed, and the thermometer said 100.8. Not an emergency. I called Dr. Raman's nurse line, and a calm voice walked me through fluids and dosing, but they had a Saturday sick clinic, and by 9:40 the next morning, I was hauling a double stroller through the office door alone, one diaper bag strap sliding off my shoulder like even the luggage was done with me. Dr. Rahman checked Ivy over with those quick, certain hands. Ears clear, lungs clear, hydration good, weight right on her curve. Teething plus a mild virus, she said. She'll be crabby and drooly and completely fine. She let Ivy grip her finger and told her gravely, "You're doing excellent work, madam." Then she rolled her stool back and looked at me. Really looked. 14 years of practice was all over that look. "And who," she said, "is taking care of you this weekend?" I opened my mouth to say it fast, the prepared way. My husband. What came out instead was nothing. My chin did something embarrassing. And in the small quiet of an exam room on a Saturday morning, with one daughter gnawing the strap of my bag and the other asleep in the stroller, I told the girl's doctor the truth, that he was at a lake, that he hadn't called, that I couldn't remember my last 2-hour stretch of sleep. She didn't gasp. She typed a note into the chart, and something about watching it become part of an official record made my spine straighten, then ran me through the short screening questionnaire they give postpartum mothers. She looked at my score, and she chose her words the way careful doctors do. "You are severely sleep-deprived and severely under-supported," she said. "Those are conditions, not character flaws, and both of them are treatable. I want you to call this number." She handed me a card for a perinatal support line. "They can connect you with a counselor. Today, ideally. And Amy, the exhaustion you're describing didn't happen to you. It was done to you. There's a difference, and the difference matters." I cried in the parking lot for 4 minutes. I timed it. Then I strapped in 2 car seats and drove home, and the card rode home on the passenger seat, face up, the whole way. Saturday, just after noon, his mother called. Dawn is 61. She ran a middle school front office for 31 years, which means she has heard every excuse the human species produces and believed approximately none of them. I had always given her the shiny version of my marriage, partly out of pride and partly because criticizing a woman's son to her face felt like a live wire. She'd seen the post. Everyone had seen the post. "Amy," she said, "tell me exactly what is happening in that house." Not this time, I decided. No more shiny version. I told her all of it. The 4 days, the 0 contact, the 2 nights in 6 months, the act like a mother. I told it flat, in order, like a claim narrative, because that was the only way I could get it out without my voice breaking. Dawn was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had gone hard in a way I'd never heard. "When did you last sleep more than 2 hours?" I couldn't remember. I told her I couldn't remember. "Do you have enough formula and diapers?" "Barely." "Order them right now. I'm coming over." I hung up, opened the banking app to buy formula, and my stomach dropped through the floor. Our emergency fund, the moat, $6,400 as of last Tuesday. Current balance, $4,380. I sat down on a kitchen chair, hard, and made myself scroll like it was somebody else's file. Pinecrest Lodge and Cabins, $840. Lakeside Marina Boat Rental, $460. Outdoor World Sporting Goods, $187. Hilltop Liquor and Grocery, $312. Fuel Stop, $114. $95. The Dockhouse Bar and Grill, $126. 6 transactions, $2,020. All of them dated Wednesday and Thursday, which meant he had been booking cabins and buying coolers while I was asking him to wash bottles. And underneath the numbers, blinking like a hazard light, was the conversation from 1 week earlier. "We can't afford that right now, Ames. The moat's for emergencies. $18 an hour for a mother's helper was unaffordable. $2,020 for his peace and quiet was fine. He hadn't just left me alone with the twins. He had financed the leaving with the money we'd built to protect them. And the we can't afford help line had never been a budget. It had been a valuation of me. My hands were shaking now. Finally, it had taken the receipts to do it. When Dawn called back to say she was 10 minutes out, I read her the transactions. There was a pause, and then her voice went from hard to something colder and more precise. A front office voice. A woman reaching for a file voice. "Screenshot every transaction," she said. "Every single one. Date stamped. Do it now before anything can be moved or disputed." So I did. And then, because 9 years of training doesn't evaporate, I did more. I downloaded the statement as a PDF. I emailed it to myself with the subject line, "Emergency Fund 813, so it would exist somewhere with a timestamp no one could argue with. Dawn arrived 40 minutes later, carrying a lasagna, a box of size 3 diapers, and the calm of a woman who has already decided how an afternoon will go. She took Lila from my arms, looked me over the way she must have looked over 10,000 kids claiming to feel fine, and said 4 words, "Go to bed." Now, I slept 6 straight hours for the first time since February. I woke up at dusk to the smell of lasagna and the sound of his mother singing to my daughters, and for a few seconds I lay there doing inventory on myself, the way you check a structure after a storm. Something had changed while I slept. The fog was gone. What was underneath the fog turned out to be a list. I got the legal pad. Item 1, my own doctor's office. Message left for a Monday callback about the sleep deprivation. Item 2, the card from Dr. Rahman. I called the perinatal support line expecting a phone tree. I got a human, and by 5:40 that evening, I got a call back from a name they'd given me. Marisol Vega, a licensed marriage and family therapist, 16 years in practice, specializing in the postpartum period. Which is to say, she told me on the phone, specializing in this exact conversation. I gave her the flat version, the claim narrative. She listened without interrupting, which by itself was was a novel experience that week. What you're describing has names, she said finally. You've been the default parent. You've been carrying what we call the invisible load, the whole ledger of the household, feeds and doses and inventory levels that only one of you can see. And when he says, you've handled the girls before, that's not an observation. That's a man describing a system that works great for him. She had an intake slot Wednesday at 10 a.m. Bring him if he'll come, she said. Come alone if he won't. Either way, your homework between now and then, write down facts, not feelings. Times, tasks, exact words said. Feelings can be argued with, Amy. A feeding log at 3 in the morning is very hard to argue with. I looked at the yellow legal pad already half full on my counter and felt something almost like a laugh. I'm ahead of you, I said. Item 3 was the one that made my hands go cold because it made everything real, our shared money. I typed family law consultation into a search bar at 9 o'clock on a Saturday night, feeling like a spy in my own house, and found a firm offering free 30-minute consultations. Kessler Family Law. I filled out the intake form expecting a Monday response, wrote a 2-line summary of the situation, and went to bed. Diane Kessler called me at 9:15 Sunday morning. 22 years of family law, and apparently she skims the weekend intake queue herself. Your 2 lines were efficient, she said. In my experience, my husband spent our emergency fund on a vacation from our infants, is a sentence written by someone who's done being inefficient. I wasn't filing anything. I was doing what I'd tell any claimant to do, understand your position before you need it. She was brisk and surgical. First, do not drain the joint account no matter how tempting. Unilateral moves look bad later if later ever comes. Second, open an individual account in my own name today and route anything of mine into it going forward. Third, keep documenting. The statement, the screenshots, the care log. Keep all of it dated. If this stays a marital repair project, none of it costs you anything. If it becomes something else, the words you'll want to know are commingled funds and dissipation of marital assets. Spending marital money for one spouse's sole benefit. A cabin and a bar tab while you were rationing formula reads exactly like what it is. Then she said the thing that reframed my whole weekend. There's also a middle path people forget exists. It's called a post-nuptial agreement. Married couples use them to put finances, and frankly, expectations, in writing after trust has been damaged. Some marriages end in my office, Ms. Carter. A surprising number get rebuilt there, on paper with signatures. The paper is what makes the rebuilding real. I opened an individual checking account online that morning. It took 11 minutes. I transferred $900 from the joint account, not half, not a raid, just documented cover for formula, diapers, and groceries. And then I emailed myself a memo stating the amount, the reason, and the time. 9:52 a.m. Chain of custody isn't just for warehouses. Sometimes it's for marriages. While I was quietly building a file, Brandon's weekend was loudly falling apart, and I want you to appreciate that I did almost nothing to cause it. All I did was stop lying. Saturday evening, after the lasagna, Dawn had taken out her phone, put on her reading glasses, and typed a comment under her son's lake photo. Public. Visible to every friend, cousin, co-worker, and church acquaintance who had liked it. Who is helping Amy with Lila and Ivy? 11 words, a front office question. The kind that looks polite and is actually a subpoena. The comment sat there for an hour while, I assume, Brandon tried to figure out how to make it disappear. He couldn't delete his own mother. He couldn't answer honestly. So he did nothing, which meant the question just hung there under his sunglasses and his cold drink, gathering witnesses. And then I did the one thing I'd never done in 6 months of polishing his image. I replied honestly. 4 words. Brandon went without us. I put the phone down and fed Ivy her bottle, and somewhere out at that lake, a story began to fall apart at the exact speed of a small town's group chats. Because here's what I learned within the hour, via a text from Theo's wife, Carla. Brandon hadn't just failed to arrange help for me. He had lied to his own friends to keep the trip smooth. He'd told Simon and Theo that Summer was already staying at our place for the week, that I was covered, supported, practically on vacation myself. Carla's text read, wait, he told the guys your sister was staying with you? Amy, is anyone with you? The lie had a specific job. It wasn't to fool me. I'd know the truth the second the door closed. It was to fool the witnesses. Reputation management, installed in advance. At some point, Brandon had considered how leaving me alone would look, decided it would look bad, and solved the looking instead of the leaving. That, more than the caption, more than the $2,020, is the detail that ended something in me. You can fix a man who doesn't understand the problem. I don't know anyone who can fix a man who understood it perfectly and budgeted for it. Simon, I learned later, read Dawn's comment and my reply out loud at the cabin. Theo asked Brandon why he'd really left. Simon, a father of 3, reminded him he was one too. The peace and quiet, by all accounts, ended Saturday night. At 9:58 p.m., my phone buzzed. Brandon's first contact in almost 3 days. I stood at the counter and read it twice because I wanted to make sure I wasn't imagining the shape of it. Why is my mom commenting on my post? Call her off. We'll talk when I'm back. 59 hours since he'd walked out. His first message contained 0 questions about his daughters. Not, how are the girls? Not, did Ivy's fever break? He didn't know there had been a fever, because knowing would have required asking. His first message was about damage control. His children were invisible in it, and I was staff. I didn't reply. I wrote the text into the legal pad, verbatim, with the timestamp. Facts, not feelings. Sunday, 7:30 a.m. He tried a new angle. Coming home early today. We need to talk before everyone loses their mind. minds. Before everyone loses their minds. As if the minds were the problem and not the 96 hours. But here's the beautiful, stupid irony. He couldn't come home early. He'd been picked up by Theo's truck. The boat was paid through Sunday noon, and two men who had just learned he'd lied to their faces were not inclined to sink their own weekend, so he could race home and get ahead of the story. He had built himself a 4-day alibi and locked himself inside it. For the first time all weekend, the schedule belonged to me. Sunday 1 p.m., 3 hours give or take until the tires in the driveway. Dawn and Summer arrived within 10 minutes of each other, and my kitchen became a war room that smelled like coffee and diaper cream. We worked quietly, in shifts, one of us always holding a baby because the babies were the point and we weren't going to lose sight of the point. I printed the screenshot of the post. Our printer was out of cyan, so the lake came out gray and joyless, which felt editorially correct. I printed the bank statement and went down it with a yellow highlighter, 6 clean stripes, the marina and the bar tab glowing like caution tape. I set the legal pad beside them, 4 days of entries in handwriting that started neat on Thursday and got shakier as the pages went on. 31 bottle feeds, 26 diaper changes, and a sleep column that added up across 4 nights to 11 hours and 40 minutes total. Then I went upstairs and packed his overnight bag. 3 days of clothes, his toothbrush, his phone charger coiled neatly. I even packed his allergy pills, and I want to be honest about why. Not kindness exactly, precision. I wanted the bag to say this was considered. I wanted him to unzip it at Theo's and understand that the woman who packed it was calm. At 3:20, with everything laid out, I faltered. My thumb was on my phone. I had typed, "Let's talk tonight, just us. I'll tell everyone to go home." The old reflex. 6 months of muscle memory. Manage him, soften it, shrink the audience, protect the image, carry the ledger alone. My heart was going hard enough that I could feel it in my ears, and my hands, steady all weekend, steady through the screenshots and the statements, were shaking now. Summer saw my face and crossed the kitchen. She didn't grab the phone. She just put her hand over mine and read the screen. And then she looked at me the way you look at someone walking straight back into the thing that trapped them. "You've been having that talk alone for 6 months, she said. "Look where it got you." Dawn, from the table, without turning around, added the sentence I expect to remember at 90. "You've been carrying him since February, sweetheart. You're allowed to set him down for one afternoon." I deleted the text. I put the phone face down on the counter. 4:11 p.m. Ivy woke from her nap and Dawn went up for her. Summer settled into a chair with Lila. I stood behind my chair because sitting felt impossible. 4:14, tires on the driveway, the specific pitch of Theo's truck, doors, voices, a tailgate, the truck pulling away. 4:15, his key in the lock. Brandon stepped inside, tanned, rested, smiling, a cooler in one hand, and froze in the doorway, exactly the way I told you at the beginning, because this is where the beginning was the whole time. I watched the data land on him in sequence. His mother, my sister, the babies, calm, held by other hands, the paper on the table, the bag by the stairs. I watched him do the math a claims adjuster watches 1,000 liars do. What do they know? What can I still control? "Okay," he said finally, setting the cooler down slowly, palms coming up, salesman's smile recalibrating. "Wow, an ambush." Nobody answered. I pulled out his chair. "Sit down, Brandon." He sat. I'll give him that. He sat. I slid the first page across the table, the gray lake, the chair, the drink, the caption, finally getting the peace and quiet I deserved. "It was a joke," he said instantly. "Guys trip humor. You know how." I slid the legal pad over. 4 days, I said. 31 feeds, 26 diapers. This column is my sleep. Add it up. He flipped a page, then another. I watched his eyes catch on the 3:04 a.m. entry from the first night. Both down. Dinner. 1-2 granola bar. No contact from B. And I watched his jaw do something involuntary. "Amy!" I slid the bank statement across last, and the 6 yellow stripes did the talking. He went still in a new way. Not caught off guard still. Caught still. 1 week ago, I said, and my voice stayed level, which surprised both of us. "I asked for a mother's helper. $18 an hour. You told me the moat was for emergencies." I tapped the highlighted total. $2,020, Brandon. "From the moat. So I need you to explain the policy to me because I've read it very carefully. And as far as I can tell, the emergency fund covers boat rentals and bar tabs. It just doesn't cover me. You went through the account? It's a joint account," I said. "You'd know. You drained it jointly." He pivoted then, because charm hadn't worked and facts weren't available. So he reached for the last tool in the bag. Temper. His voice rose. "I work 50 hours a week so you can be home with them. And the one time I take a break, you turn my own mother against Brandon." Dawn didn't raise her voice. She adjusted Ivy on her shoulder and looked at her son over the top of her reading glasses, and 31 years of front office came off her in waves. "Your father left when you were 4. I raised you alone for 6 years before I remarried, on a school secretary's salary, and in 6 years I never once stood on a dock and announced to the world that I was finally getting the peace and quiet I deserved." She paused. "I know that voice you're doing right now. I've heard it from 10,000 children. Sit with it or drop it, but don't use it in this kitchen." He dropped it. He looked for the first time in 6 years, small, "And the guys know you lied to them," I added quietly. "Carla texted me Saturday. You told Simon and Theo that Summer was staying with me. You didn't forget to arrange help, Brandon. You arranged a story instead. Those are different weekends worth of work, and you chose the second one." The tan couldn't hide what his face did then. That's the moment I'll keep. Not shame about what he'd done, not yet. Shame that the audience knew. Even his shame arrived image first. Marisol and I would spend months months on that later. Fine, he said at last, hands flat on the table, voice down to almost nothing. Fine, I screwed up. Can everyone please go home so my wife and I can— No, I said. That's the old system, the one where I handle you privately and represent you publicly. That system is closed. I nodded at the stairs. Your bag's packed. Theo's expecting you. I texted Carla an hour ago. Wednesday at 10 a.m., you and I have an intake appointment with a family therapist named Marisol Vega. 16 years of doing exactly this. You'll be there on time, or you'll have answered the only question that matters. He stared at the bag, then at me. Are you— his voice caught on it. Are you divorcing me? I don't know yet, I said. And it was the truest sentence of the whole afternoon. I'll tell you what I do know. Saturday night, I talked to a family lawyer, Diane Kessler, 22 years. She taught me a term this weekend: dissipation of marital assets. Spending the family's money on one spouse's private benefit. I let that sit. I'm not filing anything, Brandon. I'm telling you, I now speak the language. What happens next decides whether I ever need the rest of the vocabulary. The kitchen was very quiet. Lila sighed in her sleep against Summer's chest, the most innocent sound in the world, and I watched it land on him harder than anything I'd said. He stood. He picked up the bag. At the door, he stopped in front of Dawn and Ivy, 6 months old, running on milk and mercy, gave her father the wide, unguarded, full-gum smile she gives everyone she loves. She was too young to know the difference between a father arriving and a father leaving. He wasn't. I watched him understand that, all the way through, maybe for the first time. The door made the same small sound it had made on Thursday. This time, it closed on him. Here's what happened next, because he froze in the doorway is a moment, and consequences are a process. He spent 9 weeks in Theo and Carla's garage apartment, where the rent was free and the hospitality was refrigerated. The group chat, I'm told, went noticeably quiet for him. At Simon's Labor Day barbecue, Brandon was there. Nobody exiled him, but I watched from across the yard as he told a story and got polite nods where he used to get the whole patio. The fun one is an elected position. He'd been quietly voted out. Nobody yelled at him ever about any of it. That's what he'd never understood about consequences. The real ones are administered at room temperature. He came to Marisol's office that Wednesday. On time, jaw set, arms crossed, a man attending his own audit. Marisol let him do the opening statement, the 50 hours a week speech, the everyone overreacted speech. Then she asked him to read the legal pad, out loud, starting Thursday night. He got to dinner, 1 to 2 granola bar, and stopped. He read it again, silently. Marisol waited. 16 years teaches you to wait. And I sat with my hands in my lap and did not rescue him, which was its own kind of therapy. I thought, he said finally, and his voice was different, unsold, that watching them was helping you, like it was a favor I kept doing. He looked at the page instead of me. I never once thought of it as just being their father. It took him 5 weeks to say that. It wasn't a cure. It was a crack, and Marisol went to work in it, weekly, with the patience of a woman billing by the hour for exactly this. On October 9th, in a conference room at Kessler Family Law, we signed a post-nuptial agreement. Diane walked us through it clause by clause in her brisk, exacting way. The $2,020 goes back into the emergency fund at $250 a month, out of his personal spending line, not the household budget, because the household didn't take the vacation. Full transparency on both incomes, both accounts, standing. My individual account stays mine, permanently, non-negotiable. And attached at the back, at my request, an exhibit, a written overnight and morning shift schedule, alternating, in ink. 19 years of drafting these, Diane said, sliding the pens across. And this is my first one with a parenting schedule as Exhibit A. I've also never had a client tear up over a custody-free document. She looked at me over her glasses, not unkindly. Good tears? Mostly, I said, and signed. He moved home on November 2nd, not because the paper was signed, because by November the 5 a.m. shifts on his calendar had stopped being performance and started being routine, and Ivy had started reaching for him, and there is no faking your way into a baby reaching for you. Babies are the one audience Brandon ever met that can't be sold. It's been 8 months. Lila and Ivy are 14 months old now. Lila has 4 teeth and uses all of them on furniture. Ivy walks like a tiny, unsteady CEO and says, uh-oh, with the timing of a seasoned comedian, usually while making eye contact and dropping something. Brandon does the 5 a.m. shift Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. He knows Dr. Rahman's nurse line by heart. Last month, when Lila spiked a teething fever, he had the dosing chart pulled up before I was fully awake, in milliliters, by weight, and I lay in the dark listening to him sing terribly to her through the monitor and felt something in my chest unclench one more notch. Not all the way. 1 notch. That's the pace this goes. At Simon's Super Bowl party in February, somebody teased him about the famous fishing trip, and instead of smoothing it, he said, yeah, worst thing I ever did. Flat, no charm on it, and changed nothing else about the afternoon. It wasn't a speech. It was better than a speech. It was a man declining to adjust his own claim. I went back to work in January 3 days a week. My first file was a water damage claim, where the homeowner's timeline was 2 days out of sync with his receipts. I found it in 40 minutes. Some skills you're just born to use. Motherhood only sharpened them. Marisol still sees us twice a month. Dawn takes the girls every other Friday and refers to it, in front of Brandon, as my shift. Summer got a key to the house made without asking anyone's permission, which is the most Summer sentence I can offer you. And on my phone, in the cloud, backed up twice, there is a folder labeled Lake Weekend. The screenshot, the statement, the photographed pages of the legal pad, the texts, time-stamped. He knows it exists. I never threaten with it. I never mention it. It just exists, the way the moat exists. Last month, folding laundry at 10 at night, his shift, his idea, he asked me quietly if I'd ever delete it. I gave him the honest answer, the adjuster's answer. Files don't get deleted, I told him. They get closed, and a closed file stays closed for exactly as long as the story keeps matching the receipts. He nodded slowly and went back to folding tiny socks, one small pink pair at a time. So far, 8 months of teeth and first steps and 5 a.m. bottles later, it does. So far.